The Higher Education Authority (HEA) is the statutory funding agency for the Irish universities, institutes of technology, and other designated institutions. The HEA has been managing the Fund for Student Disabilities on behalf of the Department of Education and Skills since 2003. So, what's the importance of the fund? How does it work? And who is eligible for the fund?
The Higher Education Authority advises on policy for higher education in Ireland, including policy on increasing equity of access to higher education from members of underrepresented and disadvantaged groups in society. This includes the management of specialist funding programmes. Along with the Student Assistance Fund, the Fund for Students with Disabilities is part of the Third Level Access Measure and is co-financed by the European Social Fund. It operates as part of European-wide efforts to promote inclusion in higher education and in the labour market of people from underrepresented and disadvantaged groups, including people with disabilities. On a national level, the fund operates in addition to the legal framework which provides a basic floor of rights for people with disabilities to participate in higher education and works to complement mainstream resources provided by each higher and further education college.
Students on full-time SUSI-approved courses in higher education and further education, that is, courses that lead to a major award in level 6 to level 10 in higher education and level 5 to level 6 in further education. The fund covers additional costs for the college in supporting the students' disabilities. So what supports are funded?
The Fund for Students with Disabilities provides funding to colleges for a number of different types of supports and services. For example, assistive technology, personal assistance for students with physical and mobility difficulties and visual impairments, learning support and supplementary tuition where recommended by a needs assessment, Irish Sign Language interpretation and speed text support for students who are deaf or with hearing impairments, and in certain circumstances transport costs may be covered. It's also important to look at the type of supports which are not covered by the fund. The fund will not cover tuition fees, course-related equipment or materials, or any other expenses that would be incurred by a student in the normal course of study. The fund will also not cover mainstream resources which could be accessed by all students and which should be in place in each HEI or further education college. Finally, the fund will not cover medical support or other disability related support which would arise regardless of whether or not the student was engaged in study. So, how does the college go about accessing the Fund for Students with Disabilities?
Funding is provided to the college by the HEA, and the college manages the funding on behalf of the student. The appropriate staff member will make the application on behalf of the student. The college must ensure that the student meets the eligibility criteria. This includes making sure that the student provided the necessary documentation as outlined in guidelines. The college should contact the HEA directly for an application template, which would then be submitted electronically to HEA. Supporting documents from students are not submitted to HEA, but they are kept by the college for auditing purposes. However, reports by the colleges on spending and data should be submitted to the HEA.
Over the past 20 years, the Fund for Students with Disabilities has played a key role in increasing participation by people with disabilities in higher and further education in Ireland. In 1994, when the fund started, less than 100 students benefited from the fund. Now, over 10,000 students benefit directly from supports and services provided under the Fund for Students with Disabilities. The Fund for Students with Disabilities also supports the delivery of the objectives of Ireland's National Access Plan 2015 to 2019. For further information on the Fund for Students with Disabilities, please log on to www.studentfinance.ie. For further information on the work of the Higher Education Authority, please see www.hea.ie.